For those of you who don't know what the Brooks Brothers riot is, it was a demonstration led by Republican staffers at a meeting of election canvassers in Miami-Dade County, Florida on November 22nd, 2000, during a recount of votes made during the 2000 United States presidential election with the goal of shutting down the recount. After demonstrations and acts of violence, local officials shut down the recount early. This had the effect of ensuring that the December 12th safe harbor deadline set by Title III of the United States Code could not be met, guaranteeing that George W. Bush would win the 2000 election. The governor at the time was Jeb Bush, and the Supreme Court at the time favored George W. Bush in this matter. So once again, they did everything they could. They padded the decks. They stacked it with like Republican reactionaries all the way. And then they even created a fake protest that was actually violent, and they were able to steal the 2000 election. This is a very real thing that happened in the United States of American history, and it wasn't that long ago. Maybe some of you were just being born at the time, but still, I mean, that's in the grand scheme of things, that's not all that long ago, really. How different do you think things would have been if Gore had won? I don't even want to know. I don't know. I don't want to. Here.
Stop the count! Stop the fraud! Stop the count! Stop the fraud!
In Miami-Dade County, where police actually had to break up a scuffle this morning outside the canvassing board.
Like, remember, they are there to stop a recount from happening. It's not like they are there to stop a recount from happening. And they succeeded, by the way. Their goal was to stop a recount from happening for long enough so that they could actually end up passing the deadline and leave the very clearly tampered votes the way that they were. Okay? There was a bunch of discrepancies in the vote tabulations that showed that clearly the votes had been counted inappropriately. Hanging chads, butterfly ballots, and the like, including having like heavily Jewish areas of Florida end up voting for an actual anti-Semite. Like things that would have never happened. Well, things that might happen now, but things that would have never happened back then that made no sense whatsoever, which led people to go, oh shit, I think we have an issue. We need to hand count these ballots. And the Republicans, for some reason, did not want the recount to happen at that time. Interesting. And they got their wish. They were able to demonstrate. They were able to disrupt the process. And they were able to stop the recount from happening and occurring. The vote was declared too close to call for either candidate on the night of 2000. Democrat Al Gore or Republican George Bush.
This is incredibly close.
This is no longer an election. This is like Alice in Wonderland.
The entire election was riding on the state of Florida with its 25 electoral votes. Because the vote was so close, a recount was ordered. Not only because it was so close, but because of the discrepancies. This video is not even fucking mentioning that. There were massive discrepancies. Because remember, if you know anything about, you've been around long enough, if you've been watching me for a couple of years now, you know we pay close attention to how this process works. And a lot of this is actually conducted through what is known as projections, right? They're not actually literally counting every single vote. They're actually projecting on prior data that basically allows them to make assertions on which way an election is going to go so that you can find out what happened in an election in a timely manner. Because the actual vote counting takes a much longer time than the election night. So that's why you have professional people that are tasked specifically with this kind of thing to project winners. That's why they also say Fox News is projecting that Joe Biden won Arizona. Succession actually did a deeper dive into this as well in its last season. If you want to understand the background and how this kind of stuff works, you can get a better understanding from Succession as well. So it's actually not the literal people counting the votes that are calling it. It's actually television news anchors and people behind the scenes and the people that they hire, like Dave Wasserman, that is making these calls, making these projections, rather. So when there are discrepancies like this, that actually ruins the projections, and therefore they can't project accurately. So there were two reasons as to why there needed to be a recount here, and they stopped it. Two of our current Supreme Court judges, Amy Coney Barrett and Roberts, were there, by the way. They were at the Brooks Brothers riot. Brett Kavanaugh, I believe, was also involved in the Brooks Brothers riot, but I think his involvement was... I think his involvement was on the legal side, right? Or was he there? Was he literally there? Like, I thought he was like there for legal guidance. The Bush campaign had led a few hundred votes, and they reportedly were worried that they could lose if the count continued.
It's not going as accurately as it ought to be going. And what that leads to beyond that, we don't know, and that evidence has to be gathered.
Yeah, he was one of Bush's attorneys at the time, I think. They had gained entry into the election office, led by Roger Stone, where they pestered the vote counters. They actually got into the election office where they were doing a hand recount. These people that were there, how the fuck is any of this legal? It's not. It's illegal, but it doesn't matter because the United States of America is a reactionary nation. And when someone on the Republican Party has to win a fucking electoral victory, someone who is going to be more on the side of capital, even though fucking Al Gore is still a capitalist and will absolutely be on the side of capital as well, they wanted their guy in. And that's precisely what happened. Anyway, here is many, many years later, 23 years after the fact, Donald Trump, the former president, has departed the Miami courthouse after pleading not guilty to all 37 federal charges.